fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is entering its third full day, and both Israelis and Palestinians are expressing hope that this time the peace will actually last. But the truce has already been tested by a reported fatal shooting of a Palestinian man by Israeli troops near the Gaza border yesterday. Let's bring in Mark Regev in Jerusalem. He is the spokesman for the Israeli Prime Minister. Mark, thank you for joining us, and good morning to you. Does the Israeli government envision this ceasefire with Hamas being permanent?
We hope that this will be long-standing. We have no illusions about Hamas's agenda. They haven't suddenly moderated their positions. But in the framework of the understandings, the Hamas movement has promised Egypt to abide by this ceasefire, and that gives us a certain amount of confidence. One way or the other, we hope this quiet for the people of southern Israel will last. After all, they deserve a period of quiet. They've been on the receiving ends of those rockets from Gaza day in and day out for too long now, and if they get peace and quiet, if they no longer have to live in fear of that incoming rocket from Gaza, if they don't have to run to bomb shelters every time they hear a siren, that's a good thing, and we're thankful for it.
Some Israelis, certainly those who live closer to the Gaza border and have been subjected to those rocket attacks, have said that they were disappointed that Israel did not take a stronger action. A poll in Israel actually showed that 49% of Israelis surveyed wanted the government to continue the military operation. Why did Israel decide to go with a truce at this point?
I think we thought that the opportunity that Egypt put on the table, that this halt of hostilities was worth exploring. It was an opportunity that we should explore. Ultimately, if Hamas breaks its commitments to the Egyptians, if Hamas does reignite violence and start shooting at our people again, we always have the option to act to defend ourselves, as any country would if it was attacked. We hope we don't go there, but once again, if Hamas breaks its violation, Israel will respond. We hope they don't. We hope this ceasefire lasts.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Israel will not hesitate to take strong action in the future if it's necessary. Could that involve a ground invasion? Is that still on the table?
If Hamas breaks its commitments to the Egyptians, if Hamas does escalate the situation again, I think, in fairness, I'd have to say that all options would be on the table, because then we will say that we've given diplomacy a try and diplomacy didn't work. And no government would sit idly by and see its civilian population targeted by terrorists shooting rockets into our cities. No one would stand for that, and we won't either. The biggest challenge, I think, to this quiet is, of course, Iran, because Hamas's arsenal of missiles, those weapons that were fired at Israeli cities, has been substantially depleted because of our surgical strikes against their arsenals, against their military machine, and they have very few left. And so I don't think they have a lot of motivation to start another round now. Of course, the government in Iran will do what it can to replenish those supplies and try to rearm Hamas as quickly as possible. And therefore, it's very important for us, for the United States, and hopefully for Egypt, to act in a precise way and prevent Iran from rearming Hamas.
Hamas is claiming victory here in getting this truce. How do you see it? Did Hamas score a victory? I mean, even after the truce was announced, there were several rockets that fell on Israel.
I think, in fairness, Hamas will always claim victory, but the truth is, in the 8 days of fighting, we hit them hard. We hit their command and control. We hit their missile stocks. We hit their communications. We hit their organization. We hit their military machine. And I think there's a certain amount of bravado in Hamas's behavior. We didn't want this conflict in the first place. We wish we didn't have to defend our people. And we hope now the quiet will prevail and that there will be no need for Israel to act to protect our civilians.
But Hamas has always refused to recognize Israel. Israel has always called Hamas an enemy of peace. I mean, I certainly wish we knew the answer to this next question, but can Israel and Hamas coexist peacefully?
You know, if Hamas was to moderate its positions, if Hamas was to accept Israel's right to live in peace, if Hamas was to renounce terrorism, you know, if Hamas was to support the peace process, those are the 3 UN conditions. And then, of course, the door would be open for dialogue.
But how likely is that?
Up until now, Yeah, up until now, Hamas has been stuck in a very, very extremist position. You saw they shot rockets at Jerusalem, at Tel Aviv. When there was that terrible bombing on the bus in Tel Aviv a few days ago, they praised that. They say that's justified. There's not a lot of information to suggest that Hamas is in any way moderating its position. And so I think we'll have, for the time being, we'll have quiet in the south based on Israeli deterrence and based on Egypt's involvement and the promises Hamas made to Egypt to keep the quiet.
Mark Regev, thank you so much for talking with us this morning.